Hey everybody, today's episode of Lionheart Radio is brought to you by the world's first creatine coffee. Each scoop is a full cup of a Colombian Arabica bean coffee infused with 5 grams of a pharmaceutical-grade creatine monohydrate. Go to www.creatinecoffee.com to learn more. Welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv, based in San Diego, California. And today I'm here with my co-host, Claudia.
Hi, guys. Claudia Challoner, doctor of physical therapy and nationally ranked powerlifter.
So today we are joined by host of Barbell Shrugged podcast, host of the Barbell Business podcast, host of the Bledsoe Show podcast. Am I missing one?
No, you got all of them.
So
maybe it'll be another one. Who knows?
Yeah.
No.
Strike up at any time. And then you also have a few side endeavors as well, like Barbell Logic and that kind of thing as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know if that's a side endeavor. It's a full-time gig.
The actual thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes money.
Yeah. So you have Barbell Shrugged, which you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more geared toward the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Barbell Business, which is geared towards the gym owner, CrossFit gym owner.
Yeah.
And then you have the Bledsoe Show, which is geared towards...
I'm curious what you're going to say.
Expanding consciousness through different explorations that may or may not seem normal to most people.
Yes. Yeah, I try to play in the edges of reality with that one.
You released a Facebook video a while ago, like a Facebook Live or something like that was talking about what people consider normal. And if this podcast goes weird, it's okay. Just let me know.
Perfect.
We'll bring it back on the tracks or whatever.
We can go wherever you want to go.
All right, perfect. So you released a Facebook Live video, and it was about what people perceive as normal, and then how a lot of the people, I think a lot of the players in any major industry don't necessarily play by those same rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the entire nature of innovators. An innovator, if you ever read the book, I think was it Outliers or The Tipping Point? One of these books. It categorized people as on the front end of the spectrum is you have the innovators, then you have the early adopters, and then you have the early majority, the late majority, and then laggards. And so, if somebody's in the innovator category, out of necessity, they have to not accept what's already been done or accept what is acceptable by the majority. So if you want to innovate, you have to be the majority has to not accept what you do by nature.
Right.
Because if they accepted it, then it'd already be accepted by the majority.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is people end up living by these rules. I think that a lot of times they're self-imposed based on nurture or nature or a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
However they've grown up, whatever environment they've grown up in. Everybody has these rules based on what they think life should look like. And then when you have a lot of the high performers in any industry, whether that's fitness or anything else, you have the people that essentially don't have to play by the same rules.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, those people end up making the rules that everybody else.
Yeah. You were saying that people have these rules that they follow. I think the majority of people, the rules that they're following them because they were trained that other people won't like you if you don't follow these rules.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with your parents. Your parents are going to be disappointed in you if you don't do this thing or you don't do it well, or if you do this, then I'll be disappointed. I'm going to throw my wife and her mom under the bus real quick. But it started, for her, it was something we were actually able to pinpoint to a daily phrase that her mom used. That when you really objectively look at it, you go, holy shit, that's really detrimental to somebody's ability to innovate, to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the phrase was, I love you, but you're doing this thing I don't like, right? You're not behaving in a way that this or that. So the word but is really interesting because it negates everything before it. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody, you'll hear me say but very little.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear me say and in place of but where I can, because the moment I say but, you forget everything I said prior to that. So my wife lived in a world of negation around love.
Mm-hmm.
And so all she would hear is, how her mother was disappointed and was never able to truly accept the love that she really wanted to give her. And the truth of the matter is, her mom loves her very much. My wife's ability to accept that love was not really there because in our youth, we're easily programmed. So she's used to only getting love if she's following the rules that her mother set for her.
Yeah.
So, which is a very traditional thing. So I think when we go down this path of thinking about playing by the rules, I think that the people who are playing by the rules tend to be more in a place where they feel like they need to do something in order to be accepted by others, or even to themselves, accepting themselves. So if I do this thing, I'm going to be disappointed in myself.
Right.
And being open to not having that self-judgment allows people to innovate and to be early adopters of things versus people who are like, they may feel like they're controlled by outside circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that. It's okay, but just so you know, you're not quite living up to the standard that I have for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like that saying, with all due respect, and then you just put out all the garbage you were going to say about it in the first place.
Right. It's like my way of bypassing.
Yeah. I've just become really interested with the idea of like what different people perceive as reality, mostly because of my situation right now, where it's like I'm getting ready to transition out of the military, and I'm in a position where now, at one point, getting the job that I had in the military was extremely difficult. It was like, it was beyond the realm or beyond the scope of what people in my hometown even thought people could do in the military, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you get there, but now that for me has become the easiest thing in the world. Like the easiest thing that I could possibly do as a human would be to re-enlist in the Navy and continue getting a paycheck, get a really good re-enlistment bonus. And so now it's like beyond people's scope that I'm going to leave that. Yeah. Especially without the safety of another job. And people are like...
Are you getting pressure from, say, what's your rank?
E6.
Do you get like pressure from like your CMC and your chief and stuff? Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Without a doubt. Yeah. And they're like, we've already put 10 years in. And I'm like, well, a fucking decade to be unhappy is kind of long, dude. Like, what do you mean, just for a paycheck? Like, that's madness,
right?
You know?
Yeah, I remember when I got out, I got a lot of pressure from especially the CMC and my chief, because they were like, "Wow, you've already accomplished so much," and they're doing it out of love because that's all they know.
For sure,
like that is their world. They chose to stay in longer, and because they wouldn't know what to do, they assume that you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And they really don't want to see you fail. But that's usually how it's perceived. When, like, for you, it's a very courageous thing to do to step out of a world where you spent a decade. That's a long time. It's very courageous to step out and say, you know what? You may not understand, and you may have, like, you know, when I got out and I was getting a little bit of pressure, a lot of pressure.
Right, yeah.
I remember being called in the office and yelled at essentially for being an idiot.
Right.
But when I felt like that if I left, then these people who I'd grown so closely with just aren't gonna, be there for me anymore. And they weren't.
Right.
And I just had to be okay with it.
Yeah, that is a wild thing, especially about different communities. I'm sure outside of the military, it's similar with different communities, firefighter or whatever. But you're like almost blackballed if you're leaving the community. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've also heard of this happening in corporate environments where people are climbing the corporate ladder. They've been there for a decade and, they just started making six figures and, their boss. I remember this happened with Chris Moore, actually. One of the guys that was with me on the show.
Yeah.
And when he left his corporate gig, which was a medical device company, Smith & Nephew, and he worked with scientists and he worked with marketers, and he basically translated science and the marketing jargon that was like also worked within like federal guidelines. He was in an interesting spot. And he had been climbing the corporate ladder quite a bit. And his boss pretty much called him in and was like, what are you doing? Think about your family. Think about your kids. Like, this is not a good move. Basically, to go full-time. Barbell Shrugged.
Yeah.
And it was hard for him to swallow that, but he left anyway. And then after he left, after his boss realized that he's fucking out, they went and got drinks, and his boss was in his 60s. And he basically broke down crying, saying he wished he had left a long time ago. Like, he wished he had the balls that Chris had to leave because, he saw that Chris was following his dreams and following his heart. And that was something that he didn't have the balls to do when he was younger. And it's not so much about having the balls or not to do it, but it was, we live in a generation where we have access to information. We have things like this podcast where you can tune into a different voice and hear something different and hear different, possibilities and opportunities. Yeah. And so you rewind 30, 40 years ago, if it wasn't on, 3 or 4 different channels, you weren't getting the message.
Right. Yeah. Media outlets, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the best part, I think, of the podcast. I was just posting about that the other day. Is I'm like, we had the opportunity to create a alternative conversation, and people buy into these conversations that they're constantly just like these intellectually lazy conversations that are just spoon fed to them fucking day in and day out.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that people, so they have this concept of what reality is, what you should do, and then they'll try to course correct you when you step outside of what they think that reality is. And then deep down, they're in this rat race that they fucking hate in the first place. And that was kind of my whole thing for bringing that up in the first place, which is like, like you just talked about Chris's bosses. He's trying to course correct, and this reality that he's got manufactured for himself, he fucking hates in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that's the difference between operating out of fear versus operating out of purpose.
Sure.
And so, I think the majority of people are operating out of fear. They're making choices based on, what am I going to lose? What am I going to lose? What am I going to lose if I do or don't do this? And then, sometimes every once in a while, someone will wake up and go, oh, I'm not doing this out of my purpose. I'm doing this out of fear. If I was serving humanity out of purpose, then I would be doing this other thing. And now actually living into that and not allowing fear to control you that's a big challenge.
Yeah. And what's interesting is once you wake up to that, you realize, like, now when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm not growing in this job that I have. I would be like such a fucking phony if I were to stay in that. You know what I mean? And that's like, now once you're awake to that, like, even if you want to go back to operating out of fear, you can't. You can't get it.
Yeah, you bring up the word growth, and it sounds like it's something you really value. And I think that a lot of people in our generation really value growth because they're, again, going back to, there's just more opportunities now to grow. There's so many different directions we can go that may not have existed for our parents. And it's a good thing to value, I think. It's a good path.
Yeah, and once you figure out what those values are, then you can base your reality based on what those values are and not what societal values are.
There's another book I read called Drive, and it's all about human motivation. And there was he identified through some research, 3 things that people need basically to be happy or to be driven or motivated in their job, and that is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so,
what about 401k?
My prediction on the 401k situation is by the time I'm old enough to use it, it will be not a thing. Right. So autonomy, that is having some freedom. And some people desire freedom around time, and some desire freedom around task. And so for me, I've gotten to the point where I require both time and task freedom. So, and however, most people who are employed by somebody else, they're usually good with one or the other. So these are the time people are the people who work from home, and the task people are maybe they're in a job where it allows them to move around a little more fluidly, maybe in a more entrepreneur, smaller business where there's a lot going on and they can kind of pick and choose what they do.
Yeah.
So that's autonomy. And then we have mastery, which is what you were getting at, is the ability to grow. And if you stall out and you don't feel like you're growing, and you don't know no opportunity to reach mastery at something, or the job isn't providing you with more further education or anything like that, then someone and I think there's a generational thing too.
Yeah.
Then you're like, you need that. And then the purpose piece is, why am I even here? Why am I doing this job? What's the purpose behind this job? And I've asked a lot of people come to me with, how do I find my purpose?
Right.
And I'm like, what do you think should be different about the world?
Right.
And if you look at the world and go, man, I mean, it's easy to like go around and like pick out things that are wrong. But if you can go around and you pick out things that are, that you think are wrong, and you can see how it could actually be different, that's called having a vision. And that's your purpose is, wow, the number one thing that pulls at my heart, that pulls me in that direction. Like, wow, it's really sad that, like 40 years ago, it's really sad that people drive down the road and they throw their McDonald's bag out on the I-5.
Right.
And it's like, wow, that's really fucking sad. We now think that's absurd.
Right.
And that's because at some point somebody saw that happen and goes, fuck, man, that's my purpose, is to like change that. And then they started making PSAs, and it now seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like if someone did that, I'd like pull them out of their car and beat their ass. Right. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, and then now we're in this age of, call it like technological progress, whatever you want, but basically your opportunity for upward mobility is limitless. And not only that, but your opportunity to figure out a way to make your world what you want it to be, if you're creative enough, is limitless as well.
That's very true.
Right.
Yeah.
And Claudia, you're kind of going through this exact same thing right now.
Yeah.
And you're obviously not in the military, but
yeah. So, I recently actually separated from Movement RX, which I've been with that company for 3 years, and it was really hard for me because I was overly concerned about what everyone else was going to think. Everyone looks at my, from the outside looking in at my job, and, oh, you have such a badass job. Like, it's awesome. You get to travel around, you get to work with athletes and this and that. And of course, working with Teresa has been amazing. But I just felt like I was stagnant. I didn't feel like I was able to grow, even though they've been amazing. I didn't feel like I didn't see a purpose for me in the long run. Yeah. And so I finally took the leap, and I quit, and now I'm trying to figure my shit out. So now I'm like on my own, but I feel like I'm putting myself into the fire, and it's forcing me to grow and to figure out my purpose and myself. And I needed to do that. Otherwise I was just going to be in that comfort zone forever. Yeah. So it's been good. I mean, it's a hard transition, and it's tough. And I have gotten a lot of people like, oh, why would you do that? Which is always tough to battle, but you just got to stay true to yourself and go on with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, y'all are early adopters too, because I think there is a real entrepreneurial movement happening.
Oh, totally.
The economy is shifting. So it's going, all these really big companies are actually fragmenting, and being a consultant is way more common. And a lot of times that means that the actual tasks that are getting completed aren't changing. Now the time is, someone's doing it from home, or they have their own office, and they're kind of setting their own rules about how things are going to happen with their career. I think that we're looking at the very early stages of like this entrepreneurial revolution. And I have some friends that are a little bit older that are business owners, and I won't name them, but I'm really good buddies with some people. They're about a decade older than me, and they think I'm funny because I'm encouraging everybody to become an entrepreneur. It's the way they see it. I'm not, because I have staff and employees, so like, I don't want everyone to be an entrepreneur. It is not for everybody, but I do think that the economy as a whole is going to fragment and become. Each company will be smaller, and a lot of that has to do with automation and things like computing and AI and stuff like that. And so people are going to become much more autonomous with their time and task both. And I think it's going to turn into a much smoother economy because of that. The big challenge I see to new entrepreneurs is learning how to value yourself. So a lot of people move out of a space where they just get a check every week or month or whatever. Right. And then now you have to learn how to ask for money.
Yep.
And it doesn't sound hard on paper, but I've watched people shake and just freak out, or I've seen people cut what they really wanted to make in half in order to get a deal. And I'm just going, whoa. And I can say that now, having done it myself. Mm-hmm. I used to. This is the number one thing I coach gym owners on, is raise your fucking prices. And because they're so scared they're going to lose a member, like one person.
Right.
Like, no, charge what you're worth. And there's this whole self-value thing. And because we're moving into this new, era of entrepreneurship, the number one thing that you have to do is value yourself. And a lot of that comes down to, this might sound woo-woo, but is self-love. Mm-hmm. Like, how can you value yourself and put yourself out there vulnerably in order to ask for a certain paycheck? If you don't love yourself, then you can't value yourself. And I think this is one reason why life coaching has really sprung up as an industry, is because there's a ton of entrepreneurs that don't know how to ask for money.
Yeah.
And what we found, I have many friends who are working in that industry, and what we found is that it comes down to valuing ourselves, and we go a little bit deeper. It's just like loving ourselves enough to ask for the right amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes back to like what we were talking about at the beginning, which is kind of how you were raised. Because I came from like a very, I would say, blue collar family, low to middle class, whatever, however you call that. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Gracie Davis about this yesterday, who owns California Elite Training Center. Mm-hmm. Is like, I'm that person that's like, dude, I'll fucking pay the tab. Like, I would just rather pay the tab and everyone shut the fuck up and not talk about money at all. Like 10 times out of 10, I would rather just it not be a thing. And that's that same thing with being an entrepreneur. Is like, you're like, I would rather cut my price than have to go through that awkward conversation of me explaining my value to you. Yeah, 10 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm. And you got to be willing to walk away and lose the deal.
Yeah,
and I
that's tough.
People, again, that goes back to fear of losing something. Mm-hmm. And if you're operating out of fear of losing something, then you've already lost.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. Is I think people think the pie is only so big,
right?
So they're afraid to lose whatever little piece of it they have at the moment. And people brought that up about podcasting too. Like, why are you going after the podcast market right now when there's so many? It's like, do you know how many people there are in the fucking world? Do you know how many people there are that are active?
So many.
Yeah.
I think we're about half of the human population's connected at this point. So
to podcasts?
No, just the internet.
Oh, to connected at all?
Yeah, like they're plugged in,
Really?
Yeah, I think we're close to that, mainly because China's coming online. So I think that, there's 7 billion on the planet, 7.5, we think. And then it's all an illusion. But if half of those are plugged in, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for me to be successful in my business, I really only need to impact maybe 1,000. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm going to speak a different language than what you're speaking and what you're speaking, and we're going to all vibe with different types of people. Mm-hmm. And this is where being as authentic as possible and who you are is important, because it's going to make you happy just to be yourself. How freeing is that? I have so much freedom that when I turn on a microphone, I just say what I'm thinking. I don't have to like be anybody that I'm not, which means that now, like, all of a sudden all the shackles are just gone. This is fun. And a lot of people aren't going to like what I say. Perfect. And then there's going to be just enough people that love what I'm saying, and they're going to be attracted, even more attracted to the authenticity. So I'm not trying to be anybody. And because of that, people are just drawn in. So I need my 1,000 people, and then that's it. And then the other, 3 billion people can go do business with somebody else.
Right.
I'm happy.
Yeah. And the difference is if you are in that 9 to 5 rat race, you're in a position where you have to care what people think a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's, depending on where you are, what kind of cog you are into the whole process.
Yeah.
Play the game.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm somebody who adapts well. I will play the game. Like when I was in the Navy, like I was really good at playing the game.
Oh, me too.
Was I happy? No. But I crushed that game.
Oh, yeah.
It was so much. I mean, there were aspects of it that were really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, without a doubt. And like tying the whole conversation back in is like you were saying that, you know, you encourage a lot of people to be entrepreneurs. It's kind of like a buzzword now, I think right now. We're in a position where
it's definitely a buzzword.
Right.
I think all it means is that you take something and you increase the value of it. So it's a French word. I should probably look further into that.
Yeah, for
Someone
sure.
said that a couple weeks ago. I go, huh. A lot of entrepreneurs running around. It is a buzzword.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the beauty of it right now, like the one caveat to being where we are with technology and everything is you have to take advantage of it in order to, you have to actually like explore it. You have to actually step forward. And being an entrepreneur right now, you have the opportunity to, you can take whatever it is that you love in this world and you can make it your thing, right? You can make a living off it if you can figure it out. And that's the advantage to not being turned off to being an entrepreneur right now, yeah. I think
right now is a really great time to practice being adaptable because things are happening so fast. And this is where like universal basic income is going to become necessary because technology is going to move so quickly that it's going to put people out of jobs in which they won't have time to train for the next new job. And so universal basic income will become necessary. I don't want to have to try to survive off of that. You know,
whatever that basic income becomes, you mean?
Yeah. Like okay. I want to be somebody who's got millions. And then I also have that $5,000 paycheck comes in from universal basic income. But the thing is so
you're convinced that's going to be a thing?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to. We're probably sitting at like I think it was 20% unemployment right now. So unemployment's the highest it's ever been. It's not what's being reported, but a lot of people just aren't looking or they're collecting disability. I was actually just hanging out with Mark Devine. He was talking about like how easy it is to defraud the federal government with disability and the state government.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people not working, and that's because so many things are becoming automated so quickly that jobs are just disappearing. I mean, no more. There won't be taxi drivers in 5 years.
Yeah.
There won't be truck drivers in 5-10 years, and the all these people are going to have to learn a new thing that's more advanced than what they were doing before. And if you've met some people, then you know some people just aren't going to learn anything. And so they're either you have to give them some type of basic income allowance or something like that, or they will simply just be homeless. And everybody's in control of their own destiny. I believe that. And most people live in what we would call like victim mentality, where they feel like they're at the everything around them is controlling them.
Right.
Or,
like they don't have a say in the process.
Yeah. And so for the majority of the population, they're going to be put out, on the streets if we don't have something like that. And there's a few muscles we need to be flexing right now in order to train them for the future. And that one is just being adaptable, which is tied into creativity. I was going to say creativity as well. But these two things are tied in really closely together. And if you're not practicing your ability to adapt the environment as quickly as possible right now, you will get left behind. And being an entrepreneur at this point is a great way to flex that muscle and to train it. Because something like a gym, so I coach gym owners right now, and I also know that gyms will be, I imagine that gyms in a decade will be obsolete. So the idea of going into a box to exercise is going to be a strange thing, because we have right now, the technology already exists, where we can take biometrics constantly from somebody, and then AI will be able to, which we're not that far off from having way advanced AI, artificial intelligence. And it's going to make suggestions throughout the day on how you can move differently in order to be in shape. And I seriously doubt that sitting on your ass for 10 hours a day and then going and doing Fran is going to be considered a good idea by AI. And so what is more than likely going to be suggested is 5 minutes every 30 minutes. It's going to ask you to spend 5 minutes moving, and it's going to give you how to move. I want you to crawl. I want you to hold a pull-up position. I want you to do this or that. You'll need minimal equipment. and it'll make suggestions on how you can move to stay healthy. The majority of the population are not competitive athletes. Yeah, there will more than likely be some type of gym component for those people who are competitive athletes, but most people, I fall in this category these days. I don't compete. Is I just want to look good naked.
Yep.
I want my joints to feel good, and I want high energy.
Yep.
And I want to make sure I'm horny by the end of the day.
Yep.
And so these are the things that I'm concerned about. Do I need to be in the gym to make that happen? No. If every 30 minutes I got cued to go, okay, you're going to move for 5 minutes, you're going to do this.
Yep.
If I do that for 12 hours, then I've moved for 2 hours that day, which is a much healthier way of going about a movement practice than the sitting on your ass and then hitting it hard. So for the majority of the population, they're going to opt out of the gym thing. Now, if you're a performance coach, that's a different story. Now, where the performance coach is going to get put out of a job in a lot of ways is I think the coaches are focused on some fairly easy to roboticize tasks. Program design is the first thing to go. We're seeing what you're doing. You put your results in, AI is going to kick back the best next thing to do tomorrow. It's going to keep collecting results and it's going to keep tweaking you towards your goal. Yeah. You don't need a person to do that. In fact, that's the most easy to automate thing. Nutrition will be next. I think the AI designed programs will be 2 to 3 years. Nutrition 3 to 4, and then movement, in the 4 to 6 range. And so, especially once you get movement dialed in, it'll then tie better into program design and it'll enhance that and make it even better. But most people are doing this program design remotely. They're not watching your every movement and making adjustments. So it's going to be harder to replace the coach in person, but the remote coach, they're done in 2 years. So if your job is program design for remote athletes, get ready to pack it up. So this is where being in your purpose is really important, because if your purpose is to help people be healthier and happier, then that changes. Then your how the method can evolve, can adapt, right? And so this is where adaptation comes in real handy. Right now, in line with my purpose is helping gym owners, but in 10 years, I don't think that's what it's going to be. It's going to look like something else. What is it going to look like? I have no idea. I trust that I've worked my creativity and my adaptability so much at this point that I don't freak out when change happens. I just go, okay, this is a puzzle. Let's figure it out. Yeah.
But so the one...
I just freaked everyone out. All the gym owners out there.
Well, I mean, you're talking about job loss like we're not making America great again right now.
Yeah. Oh my God. The economy is such a complicated machine. Like to think that we're going to fix it with some type of policy is really ridiculous, because bureaucracy will never catch up with technology. Right. Not at this point. I mean, it was doing a good job until, maybe a decade ago, and then it started falling behind. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, once it tried to slow the economy down, it just couldn't.
Yeah, I mean,
it just doesn't work. They don't work together.
Some 6-year-old dude in Congress can't keep up with what Snapchat's doing.
Yeah, right. Very true. So the one hole that I find with technology, I listen to a lot of Peter Diamandis and a lot of the futurist arguments about kind of where we're going. I think it's really interesting, but I think the one element that I never hear mentioned is the human element, because I think we're at a point where technology and food and comfort and all these things are evolving faster than our biology can keep up. So I think when you mention okay, your programming will be done by AI, but you don't think that there's still a human element there that that technology won't be able to.
Oh, for sure. But coaches aren't developing that element. They're so focused on the spreadsheet that they forget that people will pay for connection.
Right. Okay. So
that's what people are going to pay for. And the people who are the most authentic and vulnerable are going to get paid the most.
Yep.
Got it.
I would argue that it's happening right now.
That the low-hanging fruit's being automated, and that what people are really paying for
is connection.
Yeah, I would argue that. Personal training especially is...
Yeah, our generation and younger, that's what people are paying for.
Yeah.
Our parents, they're still paying for the thing. But The thing is so many things that are seen as special now that are like done by a craftsman are becoming commoditized. So the only thing left is the connection.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think my friend Jesse Elder, he phrases it as he's going to lease his frequency.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, as a personal trainer,
I'm like, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah. That's what you're doing. I mean, people are paying you. Yeah, they want to know.
You're leasing your frequency.
Yeah. That's crazy. They want to know. People want to be motivated. They want a lot of things.
Yeah. I have to give him credit for that because it's less than 2 weeks old that he said that to me. So next week it's mine.
What's his name? Jesse Elder?
Jesse Elder.
Nice.
You should listen to him.
All right. Yeah. Does he have a podcast?
No, he does a lot of Facebook Live though.
Okay.
He's you're gonna love him.
So one of the cool things that I think you've gotten to do over your career, and maybe it's because you've just been open to it or whatever, but you've gotten a very eclectic background when it comes to training. So it seemed like at first it was very Barbell Shrugged, especially was like very focused to the CrossFitter. And now you've kind of worked into free running, meditation, like, all these different components of being physically fit or healthy.
Yeah.
So throughout all of those, what do you think you've taken away the most as far as lessons learned from all of these different things that you've explored?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are all just methods and the methods are great. And I'm in a really unique position. Sometimes it's easy for me to forget and that other people haven't had the same experiences I've had. And prior to me doing the show, so I started training in 1995. And
how do you define training? Like
going to the weight room.
Okay.
Like intentionally, like I'm going to start training right now and I'm going to do these movements and I'm going to build my body and this and that. So I've been doing that since 97. So for 20 years, and because I started when I was 15. And so I started accumulating methods at that point. And then when I started the show, it just skyrocketed. It's like a hockey stick type of thing because what happened is I went from like fumbling around by myself. And then in 2012, 5 years ago, I started being exposed to the best in the business. So these people are the best coaches on the planet. Like I've traveled the world just like interacting with these people. I've seen, man, I don't know, probably 50 different therapists with different methods, and each therapist is like mixed the different methods. They do Rolfing plus ART and Chiro, and I'm just like, and then some of the stuff that people mixed in is just incredible and mind blowing. And then you work with people who are like really good with breath, and then the water. I don't know. So I've traveled the gamut. So between my personal experience plus the people I've been around for day, I always do the show in person and meeting up and being with that person and like soaking up their being has been huge for me. And the thing that I've done is I've taken the methods and I've found what was in common with this and this and this and this. I go, that's how you get strong. That's how you build endurance. That's, like for the endurance conversation, like there's so many components to like building endurance. It's ridiculous. But I started identifying the principles. This is what's the same here. In fact, how you build endurance is the same way you build strength. But, the way the body is stimulated and adapts, these principles are the same. So you start like narrowing it down. And so where I'm at right now, personally, is it's all about, for me, I've always thought about the mind and the body being these things that aren't the same. That are polar opposites, maybe. We're taught when we're kids to put the mind on a pedestal and the body as a secondary thing to listen to. So listen to your mind, reading, writing, arithmetic, go into school, sit at a desk for 8 hours, put your body at rest, put your mind to work. Maybe you'll get recess for 30 minutes. Maybe when you get done with class, you'll go play a sport. And so the body takes this back seat. You better not listen to it because your body, it'll make you cry. And if you're a boy, big boys don't cry. And so now we should not listen to that. And so now what we've done is we've segmented the mind and the body. Whether we're calling it mind and body, we're segmenting these two things in our culture. And so what I've done and what I'm working on right now is integrating the two. And so actually, even talking about it is probably causing me to step back a little bit. I need to separate myself from that. And the thing is it's a dualistic view. And so what I like to think about this as a human experience. And so where my training is now is how can this enhance my human experience? Mm-hmm. And training is an experience. There's no place to arrive, you know? I'm not going anywhere. I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing. Right. And for me, it's all about movement and connecting to myself. And so when I'm in a movement practice, whether it's doing deadlifts or it's running down the beach or it's surfing or anything like that, it's all about enjoying and getting into the flow of the moment and then dropping out of the chatter of the mind and into the body and being present right now. And so there's a lot of dominoes that need to be set up in our modern culture for that to happen. So your nutrition has to be on point, good sleep. You just have to take care of yourself in a lot of different ways. Again, we circle back to self-love. And so a lot of my movement practice now, what I found is now that I'm at this place where I'm enhancing my human experience, really just connecting with myself, training is easy and effortless. And pain is like no big deal. And I find that I don't put myself in a box where I'm living up to expectations of other people and how they think I should perform. Mm-hmm. Like you asking me what my Fran time is now, I don't know. Like I have no idea because I'm not doing that. Right. Like that's somebody else's standard. Mm-hmm. You know, my standard is like, wow, how does my shoulder feel when I'm crawling? Oh, wow, this feels really connected. This feels amazing. Like when I catch that wave, like I'm just riding. Right. You know, and just sitting in the water is amazing. And I've been working a lot with clubs and like steel clubs and maces. Mm-hmm. And just recognizing that, wow, my body has been doing this sagittal plane thing with weightlifting and CrossFit for so long that I haven't gotten much twisting in my life and rotational exercise or even lateral movement. And I'm just like, wow, I'm just enjoying turning my muscles back on. And so when I fell in love with the clubs this past year, and I first got them and I was watching these videos. I went and got certified with On It, and I've become really good friends with that whole team. And my wife, I remember one day in the beginning, she like walked out and I'm like, I'm going to start with the clubs. And she's like, I'm like swinging the clubs and she leaves the house. And like 2.5 hours later, she comes in and I'm still like out there just sweating. Mm-hmm. She's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Are you going to work today? Or like, what? I was like, what? I'm just out here working out. I'm like, how long has it been? She's like, it's been like 2.5 hours. I thought it'd been 45 minutes. Right. But I was out there just like loving how it felt. It was amazing. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's something I've had to like really step back and look at in my own life too. Is like trying to differentiate the attainment of something versus the process of getting it. Mm-hmm. And in the thing that kind of finally I just kind of clicked in my mind is that the attainment, the satisfaction of attaining something, a goal, a PR, whatever that is so goddamn short-lived that even from a common sense perspective, it doesn't make sense to chase that. Because it's such a tiny percentage of your life. Minutes. Even if you're nailing everything you're going after.
Yeah. Is it, y'all know AJ Roberts? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he talks about this. I mean, he broke the world record for squat. And then, like, that was what he was going to do. And then, like, the next day, he's like, all right, what now? Like that was it. Yeah. He got to enjoy it. It was like 24 hours later, he was done. He's like, well, what now? And after a while, he realized he was chasing the dragon. Right.
Yeah, and that goes back to like figuring out what it is you value and building your purpose around that. We talked about that this morning. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So school has like a very set purpose, and that is to make you a cog in the machine.
Yeah, it makes really good factory workers.
Yeah, and that's like nothing to say for your health or No.
It's just, it's like the advancement of it. This is, I think people like to think about like where we're at right now as like like we're static. Mm-hmm. And we're in the middle of like, we're at the very beginning stages of a hockey stick in human evolution.
Yeah.
And because we're starting to merge with technology, and the things that we have to consider now are much different than what even our parents had to consider. It used to be that, you grew up in a tribe and you did the same shit your dad did, and he did the same shit his grandfather. It just kind of every day was kind of the same.
Right.
Like now there's like new iPhone out every few months, and
it's got more features.
Yeah, it sucks you in even more. But yeah, the whole education system is interesting. Again, going back to generational thing, there's a generation that puts a lot of emphasis on it. It's just such a big bite. Like, where do I start? So, college education, everybody has access now.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be special. And the reason we want everyone to have access to it is because it was special. But because everyone has access to it, it's now not special. Mm-hmm. So, congrats. Have we raised standards? I don't know. From what I've heard from people who are older than me and who are in the academic field, college has become like the new high school. So now we're just older when we're graduating high school. And like you were saying, like, we're just being prepared to join the workforce or, to work in a factory that doesn't exist anymore, not in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, but let's not lie to the kids that they need to get this certain level of education in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went to college. I got a college degree.
Yeah.
I didn't go to high school or middle school.
You were homeschooled.
I was homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a big advantage to having that perspective. And, I thought about every year my parents asked me, like, do you want to go to school? And I'd be like, nope. And like, there was just this thing inside of me, like, it was like, no, you just do what you're doing. Like,
mm-hmm.
You're learning, you're doing well. And then there was another part of me that there was fear. And the fear for me, which actually drove me to learn. Fear a lot of times will get you to a place, but it'll end up holding you back in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely, in high school especially, grew up with the fear of being left behind by my friends who were in school. So that just meant I studied my ass off constantly. And it turned out pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always offered to go to school, and I was like, no. But a lot of my friends that were in school that, from those days, most of them worked pretty 9 to 5, what I would consider a job that I wouldn't find fulfilling.
Yeah.
So I think the path I ended up on was the perfect one, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I think
the education system is just kind of fucked right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, even if they weren't homeschooled, like I wasn't homeschooled,
Mm-hmm.
But throughout my entire school process, I would always, like, for me, it would always be this thought of, why is this good enough for my friends and not me, right? Like, I would just not be content with that process. Yeah. And we have a shipyard in our hometown, and everybody works for it, and their parents worked for it. And a lot of times I'm, like, jealous of the contentment that people look like they have when they're, like, going to punch the time card. Really, I'm not, but like
perception.
Yeah.
Right. Where are you from?
Maine.
Maine. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're up
well,
there.
Everyone's working in the coal mines. So where I'm from.
Where's that?
West Virginia.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And where are you from?
Yeah. Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you, even though you were homeschooled, were you active?
Yeah.
As far as like physically active?
Yeah, I played sports my whole life.
And you just joined the local
clubs and stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The sport I did, the strangest sport I ever participated in, I was actually pretty good at, was fencing.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah, sword fighting, yeah. It was fun.
Did you go far with it?
I went pretty far. I was nationally ranked, and then I got bored with it, so I went on something else.
Yeah.
I have a 2-year span of interest within one thing. So everyone has like this period of time where they can be interested. Some people can be interested in the same thing for like 10 years.
Yeah.
For me, it's 2. So it's good to understand like what cycle you're in and prepare for it. And the changes you have to make are usually not as big as you think. Because like for me, this happens every once in a while. So I've been married for 7 years, but I've been with Ashley for 9. So when I hit my 2-year mark, I want to get divorced and I want to quit whatever thing I built. I want to burn it down. I don't want to just leave it intact. I want to burn it down, like dose it with kerosene, like a match, and just watch it. And I've learned to just not do that.
Right.
I've learned to like change my role in a way, or I've learned to change enough where I don't like completely because when that happens, you're destroying relationships.
Yeah.
So like myself and my business partners and my wife and like all these people in my life, we built some really amazing things, and a lot of it has to do with just a lot of discipline on my part because I have this every couple of years. I just like I feel like I'm gonna go crazy, and then I just figure out other ways to make changes to subdue myself.
Yeah. Well, it's good you have that moment of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking about the things I've
sabotaged. I've had to have people point it out to me. They're like, dude, have you noticed that every couple of years I'm like, yeah, you're fucking right.
Yeah.
Maybe I should put the matches away.
Well, it's good to know that about yourself, because if not, you're like, you don't know why you're unhappy. Then you're going to self-sabotage.
Yep, totally.
You know, unconsciously and wreck your shit.
Yeah, we know those people.
Yeah.
They just like love to just tear it up.
Yeah. So
I'm not getting happy about it.
So what is your advice for that? How do you stay satisfied then?
Oh, you make change what you do within whatever you're doing and make small tweaks. So being the head of a company is like changing, what my role is in the company or every 90 days I'm like, oh man, I need to do it again. Every 90 days I like to do a start, stop, continue list.
Yep.
So I make a list of all things I want to start doing, all things I want to stop doing, everything I want to continue doing.
Mm-hmm.
So even like how the business even operates in the world changes. You were saying that the message seems to have shifted with Barbell Shrugged, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's shifted with my interests.
Right.
And so, and a lot of that is absorbed from the people we've interviewed previously. So there's this continued evolution. But, even what the business does has changed. Originally we were like, the first thing we sold was like seminars online, and then we had training programs, and now we're serving business, gym owners.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we made these shifts, and each time we shift, my attempt is to transcend. And so transcending means to include everything you've done up to this point, and then add an additional layer of something that is playing the bigger game. So true transcendence is going to a point where, okay, the question that runs through my mind all the time, everyone usually has like a thought or a phrase that when things get tough or when they become a little unsettled, this thing runs through their head. Mine is, what's the bigger game you can be playing right now? I go, okay. And it's never obvious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the next step up is never obvious. And a lot of times it's never been done by anybody else. So we were talking earlier about innovators and people who they're playing on the edges of reality, and they're the ones that are setting the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So each level of transcendence, you actually get to set the rules for the levels you've already been through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about, I was a gym owner, and then I was coaching, a couple hundred athletes. And then I transcended into a position where I was really teaching coaches and athletes, but I was reaching a bigger audience. And then we started Barbell Business, where I was teaching the gym owner.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're, and so that's where we're at. So those would be examples of transcendence, is you grow and include. And so I think a lot of times people forget the include part. So
include what? Like what you've done prior.
Everything you did up to that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mind creates this linear thing called time, and we like to compartmentalize it. But to integrate everything you've done up to this point into what you're currently doing,
and that's the key,
is really important.
Yeah.
And then just trying to switch is the mistake. I'm just gonna go do something completely different, start from scratch.
Yeah, completely agree. I talk about this in my book a little bit, which is like in high school, people are like, I was like the dreamer, right? It's like, okay, now you're into boxing, got it. Now you're gonna be a pro lacrosse player, or whatever it is, right? And I think that now too.
You too? You're a dreamer.
You know what I mean? Though, like
I'm with you.
People though are like, they just for whatever reason can't fucking handle that. Like they have to like label you as something, because they're like, oh, okay, got it. Now you're gonna own a business. Now you're gonna do a podcast.
Well, it makes people uncomfortable when you change, and the reason is because they're so used to you. They want you to show up for them in their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I know when I talk to Rick, he's going to respond like this. And that makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm safe and comfortable. But the moment that you change, that's not the Rick I know.
Right.
Put this motherfucker on Xanax. Put him on Xanax. He's gone crazy.
He's out of perimeter.
But that's what fucking happens. I think the majority of people on Xanax are like, they woke up and they started changing, and everyone in their family and friends put pressure on them. They go see psychologists or psychiatrists, and they throw them on some pills.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, people aren't comfortable with you changing.
Mm-hmm.
So fuck them. No, but no. Hey, but I think it's worth, for me personally, what I've done is I've made a lot of people uncomfortable in my past, and people are like trying to label you.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, we got to change this label again. This is annoying. Or you could find some people who don't really label people and celebrate change and are encouraging you of your growth. I have a group of friends that I hang out with, I'd say maybe a dozen people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how they see me? They don't see me as anything other than what I've told them I want to be. So they're always treating me as the future version of myself that I've done a good job of telling them where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so then they go, oh, cool. Well, Mike's that guy. And when when everyone in your life is treating you like as the person you want to be, it becomes very easy to be that person.
Mm. And you think normally people treat people, as what they've done in the past?
Yep.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. They look at your history.
Yeah.
So like your mom is probably the worst person to help you like get ahead. Well, first off, sorry, moms, but the truth of the matter is, it's a very feminine thing, and a very matriarchal thing to do is to see things perfect as they are.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom probably told you like, oh, you, even though you lost again, I still love you.
Right.
You're still my little boy. You're still my little girl, whatever. And it's a very feminine thing to do, is to accept things as presently perfect,
mm-hmm.
and to make you feel better. That person is not going to challenge you to live into your greatest potential. In fact, when I talk to my mom now, how does she think of me? She thinks about the 35 years up to this point. And so anytime she thinks about me doing something, she's considering Michael at 7 and 12 and 18. She's not thinking about Michael at 40, which I'm not at yet. I'm 35.
Yeah.
But and then you have the more masculine thing, the patriarchal thing to do is to, your dad was more than likely like, you can do better, like pushing you, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a very common thing from a masculine perspective. And so what we need both, and we can actually energize both within ourselves and for our friends. So that's a challenge I put out to everybody, is if you can embody, and if you're a guy, you can embody the feminine and the masculine and vice versa. And that is accept people perfectly the way they are. Don't put them in this box, or yourself into a box where you're judged on your past behavior, because everything can change right now. Everything's always a choice. And so if we can go, look, everything you've done at this point is perfect, and I love you for it, and I see where you could be. Like, I see like where you can just do all these amazing things, and you're living in this really powerful manner in ways that you may not be living now. So like, really, and as a good coaching tool, is if you are painting a picture of the future without first accepting people for where they're at, and they have to feel it. And after they feel it, once you've got the whole like you're presently perfect dialed in, and you can tell when you've hit the mark. It takes a lot of practice, actually, especially if you're a guy. Then you can paint that picture of the future, and they're like, yes, I want to fucking do that.
Right.
But if you're painting a picture of the future for somebody and they're not like fired up about it, either you miss the mark on what they want in the future for themselves, or they just don't feel safe in their present perfection just yet. Man, how did I get down that fucking rabbit hole?
I don't know. But I agree with you.
It's good shit.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. When my mom's like, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm not selling my house and getting out of the Navy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, people just, they want you to, you know what I think the key is? Beat the people down around you until they're so like, just like, I got it. Just, as long as you're happy, man. That's what I've done with my family. They're like, okay.
Yeah. No, I've definitely, all right.
Yeah.
Just shock the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
They're just like, you know what? He's going to do whatever he wants to do. That's what Mom says. He's just going to do whatever he wants to do.
I just want you to be happy at this point.
It's like, good, because I'm going to go do exactly what I want to do.
But when it's not family, though, when it's training partners, when it's business partners, when it's friends, all these relationships that we build throughout whatever we do in life, I think it's important to recognize that like you will outgrow people.
Yeah. And people will, there are like so many seats at the table. And if there's 6 seats at the table and 5 people are sitting down, there's a seat left for you. And that seat's got a label and a category and everything. And you can either choose to sit in it or go to a different table. Or you can just rip someone else's chair out from underneath them and sit in that seat. It might be at the head of the table. Or, you know, I think people will treat you the way you expect them to. And I think if you expect people to treat you shitty, they're going to treat you shitty. But if you expect for them to treat you with respect, they treat you with respect. The challenge is overriding the previous experiences and really believing that you're going to be this person. And for me, it doesn't always mean moving on. It's conditioning the people around me to treat me differently. So, you know, a simple example is I've conditioned everybody in my life not to email me. So like call me would be a better example. Is like most people, they figure it out real quick. If you call Mike, he's not answering. Unless you were on the calendar, be on the phone, or you texted him and figured out a nice time to hook up. I just don't answer the phone. So in this case, a lot of people listening to this right now, they're like, I could never do that. And you're right, you can't, because you believe that. But I've gone through and this is I set up boundaries, is what these things are called, in my life that are healthy and people should do it. And it's a way of conditioning people to interact with you in a way you want to be interacted with. And it sounds a little Pavlovian in a way, but and maybe a little heartless in, you know, if you take it like that. But, you know, we're all conditioning people to treat us in a way all the time anyway. Are you being intentional about it?
Well, the world, the universe, whatever that is, I think it has a way of giving you exactly what you deserve and expect, right?
For sure.
And that goes back to what we're talking about with your relationship with money too. You know, it's the same idea. Like if you feel worthy of a certain thing, this is something that I've like had problems in my own life. It's like, if you feel worthy of a certain thing, it's like sometimes I'll nail it. It's like, I'm like just going after what I want. But then when it comes to like taking money, right, that's like a common one with me. I think the point there is you're going to get what you deserve.
I think just being open to accepting, going back to the money thing, is like something I've had to learn that lesson a few times over. And, you know, you add a zero and then it gets a little more complicated, we think, in our minds anyway. And then, but yeah, just overcoming that over and over again. And I had somebody last year, they offered to fly me out and go hiking in the mountains. And I was just like they were going to pay for everything. I was like, I was like, immediately, I was like, no. No. I will not let somebody do that for me. And then this happened simultaneously to me consciously trying to learn to be a better receiver so I can make more money. And then about 2 days went by and it hit me. I was like, what? This thing showed up. It wasn't cash in the bank, but it's something I wanted to do. And the only reason I turned it down is because I was like too proud, or I was raised in a way where, you know, you do it yourself. Right. And by the way, that's a really blue collar thing to do. Yeah. If you grew up in like a white collar type family, people are just like, yeah, you want to go skiing on my boat? Everyone says yes. Blue collar kid is like, no, I have to work hard for everything all the time. Right. So you're right. Yeah. You know, if you live like that, for sure.
Dude, I wrote a whole chapter in my book called Be Self-Made, and then I deleted it. I don't even believe that.
That's why I don't write books, man. You write a book, the next year you're like, burn it. Yeah. Burn the fucking book. Yeah. Don't believe anything I said.
Yeah, I was wrong. I was wrong back there.
I mean, it's interesting. You know, we should be evolving. Like if you write, or man, listen to my early podcast. There was shit. Like, you know, you can watch the evolution. Like, your mind should change. If your mind isn't different in a decade, you fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, your job is to evolve human consciousness as a whole, and your contribution is yourself.
Yeah. And that's weird too, because we're like, oh, he's a flip-flopper. It's like, what do you mean? Your fucking mind didn't change as you learned more as you grew?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I really like the flip-floppers.
Yeah.
A lot.
Right.
I've been a flip-flopper my whole life. It's been great.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun.
So pretty much this whole episode has been advice, but I guess for the sake of normalcy, we'll do this question anyway.
Wait, are we normal? Are we wanting to be normal?
See, I don't know what to do anymore.
Wait.
I don't have a grasp on this anymore. Structure.
Okay. There have been moments where I just kind of like, where's the edge?
Right.
I think I went way over it.
Yeah.
That's
called
okay.
Psychosis at some point. If you could give advice and it was guaranteed that every single human in this world would hear it, it would be translated to all the different languages. They would all get it. They might not all follow it, but they would all hear it. What would you tell them?
Send Mike Bledsoe $1.
By far the most effective one. Just the law of percentages, you're gonna make some kind of money. Right?
I'm gonna make so much money. I really think that if more people really stopped and considered what their purpose on this planet was to do, and they actually just fucking did that, the world would be a much better place. But a lot of people are content just doing the thing they did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people to make change.
Yeah, hell yeah. Cool. So people that are listening, how can they follow along with you and support what you're doing?
All right. Yeah, if you're a coach or an athlete, barbellshrugged.com. If you're a gym owner, or if anyone just wants to learn more about business, all the advice is applicable to any business, go to barbellbusiness.com. Mm-hmm. And then if you want more conversations like what we had today, go to thebledsoweshow.com. By the way, I'm going to be posting one soon where I interview a porn star that was in the industry for 10 years, and she will blow your mind.
Is she fit?
She's fit. Oh, we went and did squats at Gold's Gym up in Venice the other day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So that's what we call like a hook.
Yeah. Got it. I'm listening.
Yeah, watch that one by yourself. Trust me. Because I get her to talk dirty and everything. It's great.
Really? Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
for having me. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating for all of your supplement needs. And for show notes, visit luaviv.com.